There's a particular kind of moment that some of us know from the inside. A song comes on, or someone says something kind without expecting to, or you watch a stranger help an old man with something heavy on a train platform. And before you've had a single conscious thought about any of it, your eyes are already wet. And then, almost in the same instant, the apology begins. Sorry, I don't know why I'm like this. Ignore me, I just cry at everything. The tears and the apology arrive together, as if they've been packaged that way. Most of us have been taught, in ways both direct and accumulated over years, that the threshold between feeling and expression should be higher. That a visible emotion is one that has escaped its container, and the container is what we're supposed to be maintaining. So those of us who feel things close to the surface have usually spent years accompanying every moment of visible emotion with a simultaneous performance of management. The controlled blink, the fingers pressed briefly to the eyes, the small joke that follows to prove nothing too serious is happening. But what the self-management obscures is this. What we call crying easily is, in most cases, not emotional instability. It's emotional sensitivity. And those are genuinely different things. Emotional instability means a nervous system that can't regulate itself, that tips into crisis without proportionality. Emotional sensitivity means a nervous system that registers more, that processes stimulus more deeply, reflects on it longer, and responds to it more fully. Psychologist Elaine Aron identified what she called the highly sensitive person, a trait present in roughly 20% of the population and distributed equally across personality types, genders, and cultures. The highly sensitive nervous system is not a disorder. It is a neurological variant that has existed throughout human history because it serves a function. The people who register subtlety before it becomes obvious, who feel the shift in a room before the room has declared itself, who notice what others round off, these are not liabilities. They are calibration instruments the group carries without fully knowing it is carrying them. The amygdala, the brain's emotional processing center, shows heightened activity in people who cry easily. But heightened activity doesn't mean malfunction. It means the antenna is tuned more finely. It picks up signals that less sensitive systems miss entirely. When you tear up at something beautiful, or at something that touches an old wound you thought had healed, what's happening is that your brain has processed an emotional stimulus all the way to a physical response without first routing it through the filters that would normally slow it down. The feeling did what feelings were designed to do. It moved through you. But there's a version of this that feels completely different, and it deserves its own paragraph. It's not the tears at a song or the tears at something beautiful. It's the tears that come in the middle of an argument, when someone raises their voice, or says something dismissive, or makes you feel small in front of someone else. And instead of the composed, clear response you wanted, your eyes fill, your voice changes, and the argument has left the original issue entirely and is now about the fact that you're crying. This is the version most people are most ashamed of. Because the tears that come during conflict feel like a betrayal. They arrive at exactly the moment when you need to be taken seriously. They hand the other person an exit from the substance of what was being discussed. And they carry a specific internal humiliation, not just the feeling of being disrespected, but the additional layer of watching yourself react visibly to it in a way that feels, in that moment, like confirming whatever they just implied about you. What's actually happening here has a name. Psychologist Gottman, who spent decades studying conflict in relationships, called it emotional flooding, the point where emotional activation becomes so high that the brain's rational processing is temporarily overwhelmed. The prefrontal cortex goes quiet. The amygdala dominates. And what comes out isn't a composed argument. It's whatever the body produces when it's been pushed past its threshold. For sensitive nervous systems, that threshold is lower. The flooding happens faster, Not because you're weaker, but because your system was processing more to begin with. The tears in that moment are often not sadness. They're anger at being dismissed. They're frustration at being talked over. They're the physical overflow of feeling disrespected in a way that the body treated as a threat. Because to a nervous system calibrated for social belonging, being made to feel small activates the same alarm as something genuinely dangerous. The tears and the conflict have the same source: the intensity of caring about what was. That's not a reason to be ashamed. It's the mechanism being visible. The shame spiral that follows is where most of the real damage lives. You're crying. Now you're angry at yourself for crying. The anger compounds the emotion, which makes the tears come harder, which confirms the feeling that you're out of control, which produces more shame. The original disrespect has been almost forgotten. Now you're managing yourself. And then later, sometimes hours, sometimes days, you replay the moment and think of the clear, steady thing you wanted to say. The thing you would have said if the tears hadn't come first. What this costs is real, and it rarely gets named. Emotional containment is metabolically expensive. The work of holding a feeling in is actual physical work. Muscle tension, controlled breath, diverted attention, maintained composure in the face of something that wants to move. People who cry easily and have learned to suppress it are often more exhausted at the end of social situations than everyone else, because they've spent the entire time doing labor that goes invisible. Emotional sensitivity is where empathy actually lives. The person who feels things easily is often the one a room leans on without realizing it's doing so. The one who notices when someone is struggling before anyone has said anything. Who knows when to sit down next to someone without waiting to be invited. Who carries the emotional weather of a group as an involuntary and mostly uncredited practice. These capacities are often present in the same people who are told to manage, dial back, hold more inside. Science has looked at what tears actually do in the body, and what it finds is worth sitting with. Crying releases oxytocin and endorphins. It activates the parasympathetic nervous system, shifting the body from fight or flight toward recovery. Emotional tears contain different chemical compositions than reflex tears. They carry stress hormones that the body is actively discharging. The system isn't losing control. It's completing a cycle. For people with sensitive nervous systems, that discharge threshold is reached more quickly because more is being processed continuously. The tears are the system working at the rate it was built to work. What's worth understanding, though, more than the neuroscience, is what comes after the tears. Because the apology is where the real difficulty lives. Not in the crying. In the belief, accumulated slowly over years, that visible emotion is a request for forgiveness. That feeling something in front of another person is a burden you've placed on them. And the correct response to your own experience is to minimize it so others don't have to witness it. That belief didn't arrive from nowhere. It was taught. In small corrections and in larger ones. In silences and in direct instructions. In every moment, someone responded to visible emotion with discomfort rather than presence. Every time a room shifted slightly when the tears came, every raised eyebrow, every "Are you okay?" delivered with slightly too much concern, as if what had just happened was an incident. The lesson, sufficiently repeated, becomes so internalized that we start to pre-apologize. We apologize before anyone has reacted. We apologize for something that hasn't yet been confirmed as a problem. People who feel things close to the surface often spend years wishing they could become someone who doesn't. They study other people's composure from across rooms that have just moved them visibly, trying to understand the mechanism. But the people who cry easily are also usually the most fully arrived in their moments. They don't pre-process experience into something more manageable before they're in it. They sit with people in difficulty without needing to resolve it immediately, because they're fluent in the experience of staying somewhere that's uncomfortable and real. The tears are not the problem. The apology is. So the next time it comes, the song, the small kindness, the thing you weren't expecting to feel this afternoon on an ordinary day, you don't have to begin the management. You don't have to explain it or compress it or prove that you're fine already. You can just let it be what it is. Your nervous system working with complete accuracy at the full sensitivity it was built with. That isn't excess. That's the whole of it.